So without further ado, let's get started. I am thrilled to introduce today's presenters. Voltaire Santos Miran has more than 2 decades of experience in fundraising, marketing, and communication strategy for nonprofits. He's currently working with Otis College of Art and Design, Washington University in St. Louis, and the University of Southern California on storytelling and content strategy initiatives. And Deanne Taenzer is an authority on developing online thought leadership content programs that leverage an organization's experts. She's worked with leading corporations, research universities, and healthcare organizations to drive engagement with a range of audiences. In her role leading institutional and agency partnerships, she's worked with clients such as UNC Chapel Hill, University Health Network, and Emory University. Voltaire and Deanne, I'll turn this session over to you. Let's go.
All right, thank you very much, Mallory, and thank you everyone else for joining us today. Those of you who have been in our webinars before know that we normally like to start with a trivia question, and today's trivia question will focus on faculty and media, and the big prize will be a combined set of resources, a book and a number of downloads from mStoner and ExpertFile. So let's ask the question. And the question is, on a typical day, how many minutes does it take a typical journalist or reporter to find an expert source for their story? Again, on a typical day, how many minutes does it take? Please chat your answers into the chat room, and Mallory will monitor and wait until we've got the correct answer.
All right, we're getting a lot of really interesting responses. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. One person said 75, 90. Folks, I can tell you it's a lot higher than those guesses. So I'll give you a couple more seconds to send it in. Ooh, someone said 1 hour. Okay. I love the specificity of 18 minutes, Anna. I love it. It's incorrect, but I like it. All right, we got 120, 250. Dee, I think you're gonna have to share the answer with this group.
Yeah. Love this rolling thunder. I almost don't want to share it while everybody's still typing away on this. I like the one person that says, what is a typical day in the life of a journalist? I think that person might have played that role at one point. So kudos to you. That's true. There is parameters here. It actually takes about 2/3 upwards, and that's on the high end, for a journalist to find the right expert source. So you're looking at, depending on their day again, anywhere from 5 to 6 hours of time to actually find a proper expert source.
So Danielle Page was the first to guess 5 hours, I believe. So Danielle, ooh, and so did Brandon Perigo. So you know what? We're going to send both of them a prize. How's that?
Fantastic. All right. So the heart and soul of today's webinar is really that we want to help you to tell better stories about your institution through your faculty members. And the agenda that we have is to start with what matters most as far as faculty stories are concerned, to talk about the difference between a CV, a profile, and a story, to give you some tips on motivating faculty members, and then to talk specifically about ExpertFile and the tools that it brings to the table to measure effectiveness and gain insight. And then finally, a lesson learned from the time that Deanne and I have spent working with faculty members and media. So let's get started with what matters most in faculty stories. And the answer to that is it depends, because when we're talking about faculty stories, we're talking about a number of different audiences. Prospective graduates and undergraduate students look at faculty information in determining what programs they want to apply to, what schools might be the right fit. Prospective parents care a great deal about the faculty members at an institution because they're entrusting their children to these faculty members. Prospective faculty and staff want to get a sense of who the people are they might be working with or working for. And then there's a whole group of potential collaborators, tech transfer partners, peers, and colleagues who are looking for very specific information about expertise and about background and credentials. And then we have donors, alumni, and media. So when you think about all of the different audiences who are looking for types of information about faculty members, you realize that the sort of information you want to provide has got to be both deep and broad. And what we've learned is that there are really 6 facets of information that you want to focus on when you are telling faculty stories. So the first is research. And with research, the themes that emerge most are discovery. So what new knowledge has a faculty member brought to the world? The second is collaboration. How have faculty members worked with other colleagues, with other departments, in order to take a multidisciplinary and innovative approach to their work? And then finally, impact. What is the import of everything that this faculty member has done? So what I'd like to do is show you one really great story that I found. And if you all have, if any of you have been looking at the work that University of Washington has put out, they're doing some beautiful storytelling, some wonderful immersive multimedia storytelling as part of their Boundless campaign. And this is one of the stories. This is about inclusive engineering, and it talks about this little girl who has one of these strange diseases where the left and the right part of her brain develop at different rates. And the story is about how a number of faculty members came together to design treatment and design tools in order for her to have a wonderful life. So I'll share the link of this out with the presentation, but what I want to call your attention to are just a few of these really lovely grace notes that are part of immersive storytelling. So we've got the design that is meant to allow people to read at leisure and to really engage with the story. We've got illustrations and up quotes. We've got beautiful photography, and beautiful photography is really one of the hallmarks and the foundations of great digital storytelling. And you see here the different people who collaborated in order to come up with this solution for the young girl. So again, I'll send this link out to everyone at the end of this presentation. And if you get the chance to take a look at this, you'll see some of digital storytelling at its finest, focusing on research and faculty members and collaboration. Let's head back to the presentation. Take a look at the second facet of faculty storytelling, and that is scholarship. And here, what we focus on is publication. So what books, what articles, what journals, the sense of authority. So how does this person rank in the institution among his or her colleagues around the world, and what sort of expertise does that faculty member bring? So this, from Brown's 250th anniversary, is a story called The Creative Mind. And I love this story because what it does is it stitches together videos and interviews that are part of the Creative Mind initiative from Professor Richard Fishman at Brown University. And it talks about the different approaches that faculty members take to creativity and to innovative thinking. It's a beautiful piece that, like I said, brings a lot of storytelling and multimedia to the topic. So I'll share the link out for this as well and encourage you to take a look at that. The third facet of faculty and storytelling is practice. And I put this slide in specifically for our friends at College of Lake County. Thank you for the advanced question, asking about what do you do when you are a community college and a lot of your faculty members don't publish, they don't do research. And I think the right answer to that is you focus on practice. You focus on the time that people spend in the classroom. You talk about the passion that they bring to the subject matter and the way that they engage students through the methodology of teaching that they use in order to stimulate thinking, interaction, and conversation. So I pulled an example of what I think is really great storytelling from Oakton Community College. This is a quote from Camille Harrison, who is a associate professor of modern languages. And she says, "At heart, I'm a teacher." She's grown to value the diversity of culture and language, but she also talks about the common humanity that is a core value and a shared belief at Oakton, and how she spends a lot of her time to instill that sense of common humanity in her students and to impart the love of language that she has for Arabic and French. So this was a very simple profile. It was a photograph, a story about her background, and a number of quotes from Dr. Harrison. And it is a really, I think, effective way of giving people a sense of the types of professors, and specifically this professor and her approach to classroom engagement and practice. I think the fourth facet that people want to hear about, particularly prospective students and parents, is the mentoring aspect. This idea of one-on-one interactions, the opportunities for advanced learning, and particularly I would say for graduate students, this idea of advice and introduction. In all of the research that we've done, we've learned that graduate students select faculty members very specifically, not only for their expertise and the mentoring opportunities that they see, but also because they realize that faculty members are going to be their best introduction and are going to provide the stepping stone for the first job out of school, ideally. So one really great example of an institution that engages prospectives and other audiences in the topic of mentoring is the Kelley School of Business. And Deanne, I'm going to ask you please to share a little bit about this story.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was delighted at the opportunity to meet with the folks at the Kelley School of Business. And, you know, it was really an interesting question when I said to them, hey, so, you know, you get some really interesting top marks in different places, you know, best professors, student satisfaction. So what do you attribute your success in this ranking? Because I know, especially amongst business schools, rankings are pretty important. And, you know, Darren said, Darren Klein over there, great guy. He actually said, you know, it's amazing. We actually put a focus on having EQ be a part of our program. So along with curriculum and the things that you were learning, each one of our professors really wanted to tap into how could I actually help with the emotional quotient of somebody that's looking at something post-graduation. And they've kept tabs with a lot of students who have graduated and, you know, where they are now and how to prepare for that first job. And you know, not only do you need the curriculum base so that you have that sort of institutional focus and understanding to get the job done, but how are you interacting with people in a new space once you get out of sort of the academic space? And, you know, what is it like working with people from a conflict resolution, especially when you have a new job and you want your voice heard? And I thought, what an interesting concept to say that the emotional quotient and the mentoring piece had become such an enormous focus for them that it resulted in not only incredible feedback from their student body, but a really great success postgraduate, that they do have one of the highest ranked postgraduate employment percentages, which is pretty fascinating.
Very cool. Thanks, Deanne. Let's take a look at a couple of more facets of stories for faculty members. Fifth one is engagement. And when we talk about engagement, we talk about telling stories of how faculty engage on campus, in local and regional communities, and in the broader academic community, and as a global citizen. And I found this really great example. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of Brevard College, but there is a wonderful set of resources here that talks, and this is about Dr. Robert Cabin, who is an associate professor of ecology and environmental studies. So one of the pages on their site talks about the book that he co-wrote with art major Ashley Lowe. So you've got that mentoring as well as that sort of engagement model. It's a bit of a twofer here. And the book title is What We Eat and Why It Matters. And it talks about why they took this approach. It's paired with a really great video about the environmental science major. And then when you click on the link to the book, you get a really wonderful long-form storytelling piece from terrain.org about this book itself and what the import is and why this book is important. So I thought this was a really great way of showing faculty member engagement, again, on the campus, in the local community, and in the world. And then the final thing that we look for, honestly, is personality, right? We look for relatability. We look for individuality. And while we don't want to admit it, we also look a little bit for poise and charm. And I think that this is particularly relevant when you are a media professional and you're trying to find someone who's not only going to be authoritative, but also someone who people are going to be who are going to be able to relate to and respond to, and honestly, to a large extent, to like and connect with. So Deanne, you've done a lot of work with faculty experts. I'd love you to talk a little bit about our friend Klaus Fox.
Yeah, and you know, before I start, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways. I saw a little chat window come up, and when you talked about how to engage faculty, and I think it was Dana that said cattle prod question mark, and you know, sense of humor for everybody who's on the line. I have to give you credit. It is a painful walk, and you know, having worked with so many marketing, communications, and media and internal folks that say, "Gosh, it's like pulling teeth." You know, I want to engage my faculty, but sometimes they make it a really big challenge. And a lot of times what we understand is that, you know, there are two sides of the coin, right? You've got what they care about and what you care about, and somewhere there's this beauty lying in the middle. Klaus right here, he's about 6'4", I think. He's super animated. What falls a little bit below on this profile, and you know, if we have time, I'll show you the whole thing, is a series of videos, and in each video, he has this charisma that comes through even in the still shot, and so it really humanizes him. It actually, I mean, it was one of the profiles that I was drawn to, and I actually asked, "Can I meet Klaus?" Because I mean, I've looked at his profile so many times and seen him in video, and he just looks like this incredible guy that I want to hang out with, and he is really dynamic and animated. Now, does that mean that all of your faculty members are gonna, you know, be that super animated, you know, dynamic personality? Not necessarily, but a lot of times, you know, you do want the balance between intellect and entertainment. And the poison charm sometimes is shown through their content, and their content really tells a story about them, and where their heart lies, where their passion lies. And it could be that they're this animated person. It could be that they're a little bit more stoic, and their subject matter is incredibly important to them. And engagement on that side from a personality can lend itself really nice to that subject matter. You know, I think especially when you're talking about critical items in media specifically, if you were to talk about, or even research, you know, sometimes you do want that personality that is stoic and firm and the serious nature, depending on which audience is looking for that. What I think is the biggest piece is, how do you show that personality? And I love the examples that you've put together, Volt, because I think it does show that the humanization of these faculty members, and being able to show multimedia and, you know, pictures of them in action lends itself to, this is a person, and I want to spend some more time with this person potentially, and engage with them in their subject matter. So interesting on that personality front, because there's certainly a lot of different ways to showcase it, and showcase it really well, despite them not all being folks like Klaus.
Awesome. Thanks, Deanne. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between a CV versus a profile versus a story. So the first difference that we note is that a CV shows depth and breadth. So basically, it's everything the faculty member has ever done, right? In as much detail and as much punctuation as one can manage. A profile, on the other hand, focuses on the highlights of the career, the things that, the curated list of what people really want to know. And a story usually shares a very specific narrative. Second set of differences is that a CV iterates credentials, while a profile establishes authority. A story, however, is really great at making connections. The third difference is that a CV lists research efforts, a profile showcases results, but a story is amazing at demonstrating impact. And the punchline to this, honestly, is that you need and you want all of the above. You want all of these things. You want the comprehensive list of research, but you also want the profiles, you want the video clips, and when it's possible, you want those long-form stories that help to weave both more of a specific narrative and a broader narrative about the institution at the same time. And ideally, these things are complementary. They're cross-referenced. They have a really nice balance between timeless topics and trending topics, and they're dynamic, meaning that when you update something in one area, it automatically gets updated somewhere else, so that you are not manually trying to update multiple pages of faculty information that are spread out across department, program, directory pages on an institutional site. Deanne, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, you know, I love the fact that, you know, we are saying you need everything. I think a lot of times people will say, well, what's the silver bullet? Tell me this one piece that I need that's going to wake up every audience that I have. and being able to not only create those connections through story. You know, everybody knows that about 6 months ago, Zika virus was the hottest topic ever. And there were a lot of great stories around that, but that's not hot anymore. So you do have those timeless and trending topics, timeless in terms of things that are always going to be relevant to everyone in some way, shape, or form. And those ones that pop up that we can never expect that are taking a significant amount of people's attention. I think we see a lot of that in even the news, you know, over the last couple of months. It's very dominated from a political perspective. Dynamic is key. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, you know, there's not enough people in the world to be able to keep, you know, a profile and all these different elements up to date all the time. It's a little bit time consuming. So if you can do, you know, sort of once and have it publish everywhere, but more so also from your brand reputation and market visibility perspective, if I'm seeing that profile or I'm seeing that person in more than one area and I have a good consistent feel for them and their information, it helps to have that coherent and cohesive information that it always looks the same. Well, not necessarily looks the same, but it has that same presence and that same, you know, sort of nature to it, as opposed to, oh, there's this sort of profile over here, and I didn't know that this, you know, this information applied to this person. I saw something different over here, and oh gosh, that picture looks, you know, much older than this picture. Is that even the same person? I mean, they have the same name. It can create a little bit of confusion. And so sometimes that consistent information lends itself beautifully to brand reputation, market visibility, and again, feeling close to that person so that you know, oh, this is the same person. Wow, they've done a lot of great things, and I have the ability to go through all of them. So, you know, I love what you're saying here, Volt, for sure.
Good deal. Well, let me show you some examples. We pulled a few that we thought were really relevant. The first one comes from the Department of Sociology at University of Texas at Austin. This is Ben Carrington. This is his CV, right? Yeah, as much information as you can put in as much punctuation as you can manage. So this is Ben's profile. Much warmer, far less content. And I want to click into this because I want to show some of the different types of content that they feature on Dr. Carrington's profile. So they obviously have his interests, much more of a curated biography. And then when you click into his courses, one of the things that I think institutions could do a really much better job at is featuring the descriptions of courses. And I know that it has become much more of a practice to have faculty members write engaging titles and descriptions of their the coursework that they're offering. And so I want to highlight, let me see, I think it's this one, the sociology of sport. This sounds fascinating, and anyone who knows me knows that I don't know anything about sports, but I would take this course because as you look at it, and it talks about the complex and contradictory relationship between sports and society, gender and representation, violence and deviancy, sexuality and homophobia, commercialization in college sport. I mean, this sounds really, really interesting. And it also gives you a much better sense than just a title of a course about what is important and what is of scholarly interest to Dr. Carrington. So that's a profile, and the profile looks really cool. All right, now check out this story. Isn't this one of the most beautiful photographs you have ever seen in your life? It is an absolutely gorgeous story, and the story here is the fact that Dr. Carrington was one of the Texas 10, one of the 10 top faculty members at University of Texas chosen by alumni. And so you can see here, and I love the stuff that University of Texas puts out in their interactive. It's absolutely beautiful stuff. Great photography, great design, sense of personality. And we're getting to Dr. Carrington. He's here. He's here, and there he is. And then you read about his story and how he was a professional soccer player in England for a long time, and that his life took a bit of a turn. He thought he would be a professional soccer player. That life didn't work out that way. He became a scholar, but he still actually competes. And extra points, actually, for the fact that they put a link to his website on the profile of him, and you get much more a sense of his personality. One of the things that I'll point out is if you take a look at the photography, this is one of those really artful things where the photography is consistent across the profile, of the Texas 10, or the story of the Texas 10, his profile. And if you take a look at his own site, he's using the same photography. So those photo shoots are hard to plan, right? They take a lot of time. They take a lot of effort, and in some cases, they take a lot of airbrushing. And this is one of those examples of making maximum use of photography so the best pictures of faculty members show up in multiple places. So let me give you just a couple of more examples. This is from Kellogg, and this is a little bit of an older example, but I think it still has legs. At Kellogg School of Business, I think roughly 10 years ago, designed a faculty or a set of faculty pages that was meant to be a mashup of a CV and timely information and media information. So you see here for David Basenko that there's an overview, there's a place to list the recent media coverage, and link to stories that are created actually by Kellogg. There's a place for him to put all of his Vita information, to highlight his research articles, his teaching, and then the actionable items here on the right: contact information, location, place for the website, a place to download the V card, and download the Vita. So while this is an older site, like I said, it's roughly a decade old, it was a very well-planned, integrated site. And as we look for examples of institutions that are mashing up this content and managing well, it was remarkable to see how few institutions actually were doing it as well as we had hoped. So one last example, and Dee, I'll ask you to take this one away, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, I've been a really exciting example for us as well, as when you can actually make those profiles dynamic and live in multiple places, you end up reaping some benefits out of it. This is Jeremy Powell. He's out of Loyola Marymount University. He happens to have written what is turning into quite an interesting book around the Persian Gulf drying up by, I believe it was 2110 or 2100, and he has not even by choice, just by the nature of the stories he's been telling and how they've been presenting him in different facets, either through social media or on their own web pages through his profile. It garnered quite a bit of attention around climate change. You'll notice that at the top, Jimmy Kimmel's segment, there was a video of scientists, and they showed this crazy video, and you'll notice the subhead is quite provocative and dramatic. We're not messing around about the fact that climate change is a thing. He's also seen at the very bottom, it's a soccer site that's talking about off the post, right? And talking about, hey, if we do this Qatar, World Cup, are people going to have air-conditioned helmets because it's going to be so hot and blithering? And he's been quoted in all of these really dynamic stories that cross so many different elements. He's got 23 published stories. He's been, looked at by ABC News, and it's funny because his profile didn't make him look like the biggest media hero of all time, but he had this incredible content that was put out there in a really dynamic way. And having his profile be accessible to so many people and having it be discovered by so many people turned into what is now, people saying, wow, Loyola Marymount has one of the best climate change experts in the world. International, national coverage from the media perspective. Jeremy Powell is, as a Nobel laureate, he's certainly well sought after in the research community. And this actually turned into a ton of research collaboration as well, because peers that may not have known who he was from across the globe were reaching out to say, hey, can you co-author a book with me? This is right down the path. Even, people in the Persian Gulf that were reaching out. So I think it lends itself to say that if you are able to share something, again, going back to that trending topic, what's hot right now, and he's touching a nerve by sending something out and having this showcased across different mediums where people go, hey, that's really important to me. They don't wake up in the morning saying, I think I need to reach out to Jeremy Powell at Loyola Marymount University. They're probably plugging in, climate change guy, West Coast, So how do they find them? How do they seek him out? How do they know that he's the right guy? And then all of a sudden you see these stories that are coming out and he can validate it for them, also accessible and being able to tell his stories because of his passion behind it. So another great example of something that's dynamic and storytelling and not intentionally looking for those things, but reaping the benefits that come out of just being accessible and being discoverable.
Very cool. Thanks, Deanne.
No worries. This is another great example. Amy Black might be one of, I love her. I love her moxie. I love her profile. As you can see, it's very visually forward. I think that people, as much as Kellogg has a great example of how everything was pulled together, what you might have seen is that it's missing that multimedia element. It's missing that what makes this person the person and all the different pieces of them. So the 360-degree view, but a little bit outside of text and more into the visual. And we're really drawn to visuals. It does pull, 9 times better than text. So let's show the visual representation of that person. What's beautiful about this is she's actually been tagged into the real-time news cycle. So those little spotlights at the top actually talk about little stories that she can weigh in on. She has different elements. Obviously the hottest topics right now, from inauguration to political environment. So she's been shown as, hey, this is the gal you want to reach out to. And by the way, check out my books and a couple of videos I have. I'm a social person. So if you want to reach out to me social, I'm there for you. You can also see a few other experts that exist over at Wheaton College. And you're now getting an experience of, hey, not only are they showing me this really dynamic lady and all the things that she's doing, but they're also showcasing a few other people that I might be really interested in and want to read their story. The visuals and the relevance of her subject matter come alive in this profile. And I think that's really interesting. It's snackable information. We are a very time crunched community. Our attention spans might be about 3 seconds long. And it also provides an action. So right now I can contact her. It's not necessarily just giving me an email and a phone number, because I know, and I think most people on the phone know, calling your faculty expert is probably going to net you with no response, or nobody picking up the phone because they're busy doing other things. And emailing them, it's a gamble. It's you're rolling the dice and hoping for the best, right? So this is a way that I can go, okay, I'm going to reach out to this person, or even share their profile or create some nice dynamic push with it. So it gives you action. Do I want to share it? Do I want to contact this person? How am I going to interact with this? Am I watching a video? Am I, reading a story? So the audience is engaged. I'm not just going, okay, all right, I see your bio. It covers about a page. I'm bored already. I'm actually able to do something interesting and interact with the story that she's looking to tell as well. So I really like her profile. Super biased over here though. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Deanne.
No
So
worries.
let's talk about some tips for motivating faculty members. So what are the pain points that we all experience? Well, there are 4 main ones that we identified. The first pain point is basically just collecting the information from faculty members, right? Getting the information that we need to populate their profile, or to tell a story about them, or to tie them into a larger narrative, or to get video FaceTime. Second pain point is overcoming the suspicion that we are marketing and communications and we are bad, or even worse, we're development and we are really bad, because we are going to spend our time trotting them out like show horses in order to raise money for the institution. Let me fess up, I'm married to a faculty member, so I know all of this firsthand. Third pain point is keeping that information consistent and up to date. And then finally, providing a range of options that scale up or scale down. I mean, the number of long form stories that we are going to be able to tell, like what we saw at University of Washington, are going to be fairly limited. Those are large investments, particularly when you look at the photography, the multimedia, the illustration, the design that goes into that storytelling. You're going to be lucky to get maybe half a dozen of those a year. So what you want is that profile mechanism to tell more, and I loved your term, Deanne, snackable stories that people can digest, the paragraph versus the long form narrative. And when you have both, that's awesome. So a few pieces of advice that Deanne and I have come to together. The first is to develop empathy for the faculty member's experience. And the 2 lessons we've learned here are, number 1, understand the expertise, and number 2, consider the cost and the benefit of each opportunity. So by understanding the expertise, I mean really spending time understanding what the faculty member is a scholar of. I think I've heard so many stories of faculty members coming to me and saying, well, history is a big topic, Volt. Just because I'm a historian doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to speak cogently on the Revolutionary War. And a lot of times what we do is we paint historians and scholarly disciplines with a broader brush than we ought. So taking time to understand really what the faculty member is an expert at, what they care about, what they can speak on is important. And the second is to understand that there is definitely a cost to opportunities that we give. On one hand, getting people out, get people profiles up, gives them more visibility. And for people who are publishing books and who are engaging in research or trying to boost enrollments in their classes, that's really great. But there's also a downside to providing this information. And I actually know a faculty member who had done an op-ed in a Chicago newspaper that was read the wrong way. She literally had to change her email address, turn off her old email address, and have armed guards walking her to and from class for a couple of weeks because she had gotten so many death threats from people who misunderstood the topic of her op-ed. So there are definitely benefits, but there are also costs to this. Deanne, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that the chat window didn't light up just by reading "Develop Empathy for the Faculty," because I think a lot of times, I mean, I've heard everything from, oh, you mean the PhDs and the PhDs, and I mean, I've heard every iteration of those types of terminology, and I think we know that they can be short on short a painful crowd to be working with. Sometimes I think it's not all faculty. You end up having the people who are really looking forward to actually participating, and then other ones that, truth be told, to your point, Walt, in your story, there's fear. Am I going to be shunned by my community? I mean, everybody knows that research is a tight-knit community, and they can be pretty lethal sometimes. I think faculty understand the benefit, but they also want to know, well, what's the benefit of me putting time to this as well? Because I have a lot of other commitments around getting grant, applications in to make sure that I forward this research, and I don't necessarily want my words minced by media who are looking for a grandiose story. So I think when we're looking at empathy, it's again understanding that expertise and understanding that the profile needs for them to serve a purpose for them as well as for you. So the suspicion around marketing, like, oh, the marketing team, they're just, I like the show pony parade visual. Also, what is in it for you and what is it in it for me? And, that sharing, like I mentioned before, there's a happy ground in the middle where they go, wow, you really do care about things that I care about. And thank you for that. And the other side, marketing can say, not that I don't care about those things, but wow, these things will really help me. In our experience, when you pull something together that they're delighted with, you get people that really come out of the woodwork. And truth be told, a little bit of ego does go a long way, because they don't want someone else to necessarily look a little bit better than they do, because they've spent a considerable amount of time and energy spending time here to make that reputation for themselves. So, I love the fact that it's, not that you have all the time in the world to walk the halls, but finding out what's important to them and their expertise area and why they may be uncomfortable, being put into the media spotlight. And then also, is this going to create a benefit on both sides for both the institution and the faculty professor, faculty expert, with a critical eye, and taking those costs sometimes when you want to be dramatic and you want to create a little bit of controversy to get the point across. And I think there's some dynamic opportunities there as well.
Thank you. All right. Second tip that we offer is begin with the faculty members who want to engage, the rock stars and the rising stars. Deanne, talk a little bit more about this, please.
Yeah, I think we all have them. If you're a marketing person or a media person, we know the people that have already, either they've been working on their own reputation, their own personal brand out there, and they're more apt to come and say, yeah, I'm willing to work with you because this is an area I've developed for me and I really see it as a part of my future goals. And then we've got these wonderful invisible experts, the rising stars who have an incredible research area. A lot of them are younger, who are saying like, hey, I'm going to develop this into my own personal brand that I'm developing right now. And with these invisible experts, their content is rich. It's like a little gold mine that you can tap into. We always love the way of self-profiling. Those people who they haven't come running to your office for a number of reasons. One is they may be a little afraid of you. they've been warned by other people. They're just not really sure the avenue to take. They haven't volunteered because they're busy or what have you. But those rising stars can be an absolute delight to work with when they kind of discover, wow, I get to share some cool stuff about what I'm doing. And we are in a generation where sharing is key. So they become these little nuggets. The rock stars themselves, obviously, they're that trusted group, but you can also have, sometimes you have painful rock stars, right? But if you start with some quick wins with those people that are trusted with you, that can get the story out there, that they're sort of a set and forget because they have some training, then you can get other people to sort of come on board and sort of look at this as an opportunity and a benefit. Will you win over 100% of faculty all the time? No. I mean, I'd love to say that 100% success, every faculty member's in. No, you won't, but it's okay, because if you actually have this nice pool that you can take from, you can actually have faculty that never see the light of day, that their content still brings wonderful results to you. So, if you have a level of control, you can be like, that guy's on sabbatical, or sorry, he's not available, but I have this other wonderful expert for you potentially. And so I think understanding that there's a bit of a separation between content and the use of faculty and media is also a distinction that is helpful when you're looking to leverage that asset.
Excellent, thank you. All right, third piece of advice is to tie into processes that already exist at the institution. This idea of initiate and automate, and this idea of reducing friction. So let me give you an example. We all know how hard it is to get updates from faculty members about things that they've been working on, conferences that they've spoken at, new publications. To be sure, they're very busy people. One institution that we worked with realized that all of this content was stuff that they actually were developing, and they were turning it over to the office of the dean, and they were doing it every year because it was part of their annual review, and they couldn't get raises without turning this information in. So that institution had this aha moment where they realized, well, if we automate that system, if we make it more of an electronic submission system than a paper form that they type up in Word and then they send in, then we can actually have dual duty for this content. So they created a system for faculty members to input all of that information, and it went to the office of the dean, but it also got flowed into the faculty site at the same time, so that the site content was up to date. And that's a really great example of finding ways to tie into something that's already being done. And honestly, it reduces friction because faculty members are only asked once for that information, and they tend to it once, and then it gets multiple use. Deanne, would you like to say anything about this?
100% agree. I mean, if we can reduce the friction on how systems are, requiring their time, and also, how much heavy lifting we're requiring from sort of our IT and digital folks, I think we make friends instead of foes. And I 100% agree. If we can automate and reduce friction, but still keep things really interesting and build that infrastructure, we're in really good shape.
Cool. All right, and the last tip that we have, and this leads into the use of ExpertFile for measurement and insight, is employ a system that enables collection, promotion, and measurement. So let's move into using ExpertFile's tools to measure and gain insight. Those of you on the webinar may know that ExpertFile and mStoner forged a strategic partnership, I would say roughly 2 years ago. We were incredibly impressed with the tools that ExpertFile provides for faculty profile development, but also for management, for metrics, and we thought it was just a natural fit for a lot of our clients to use. So Deanne, I'm really looking forward to your sharing some of the stuff that ExpertFile is able to do in terms of helping to tell faculty stories.
Awesome. Thanks, Volt. It's interesting because I'm looking at a lot of the commentary and the feedback, and, trying desperately not to get distracted and wanting to just let's all go for have these conversations, because I'm loving the group here. But, we were super motivated with the partnership with mStoner as well, because I think what we found was somebody who said, we've been vexed in this area. There's no good system today that actually focused specifically on this incredible and rich resource, and one that is very important for a higher education institution. So when we actually went down this path, we also couldn't find a good system in order to just do this piece. So it needed to be something that you could put into your existing CMS. We don't want friction, right? It needed to be something that could capture the essence of a faculty member as a whole. It needed to be something that had a management component to it, because we know that these marketing and communications teams are stretched very thin. So, when we pulled this all together, we also realized it needed to be something that can be distributed beyond just your web pages and into that world to tell those stories. It needed to be something that you could measure, because right now it was always very manual. Like, I think the Marcom and other folks within the institution said, I know this is important, I know it's valuable, but how do I show not only my leadership, but other communities that want to see, why should we spend some time or even investment in this area? And we've learned a lot along the way. I mean, even in the 2 years that we've known you guys, I mean, I think we've certainly, learned a lot of different lessons and a lot of different ways that this can evolve, even beyond our borders. We always say start with your bench strength. I mean, I think that goes back to start with your rock stars. Find out the people who are able to be responsive. We have some great examples of different institutions that have done this really well. I mean, Wheaton College makes them sign a waiver, and now she's got so much demand she doesn't even know what to do with, which is amazing. Having them be relevant, credible is a shoo-in. I mean, they're professors, so you kind of have a lot of that done. But making sure that they're engaging, influential, and responsive. Again, you're not going to have every faculty member, but having those elements really is key to establish that bench strength. So that's where we often start. The other piece is tapping into their content comfort zone. And this piece here is really about asking the questions. Now, I noticed somebody came up and said, hey, we do offer media training. Some people take advantage of it, some people don't. We had said the word media to a lot of faculty people, and some people sort of leaned back with terror in their eyes and looking like a deer caught in headlights, and oh my God, I have visions of being on CNN and they're gonna rip me apart and everybody will shun me. And then other people, when we said, would you do radio or would you do print? They're like, yeah, totally cool, man, I'd do a blog, that's great, So I think everybody defines media very differently. And so we've created a little pulse survey that goes out to your faculty so they can self-identify where they would participate and if they felt they needed media training. And that's been incredibly successful, because it gives you a little reservoir where you're typing, who do I have for infectious disease? Oh, look, I've got, 2 people that'll do print and 1 person that'll do radio. And, it's a great little tool. It also helps people self-identify in an anonymous way, so they're not feeling like pressure in front of other people, or, please, I'm asking for help, which can be uncomfortable for some. So, and if you want to pop to the next slide, well, please and thanks. This is a way for them to do that. So, will I do a television interview? Will I, sorry about that. Will I do all these pieces? And it's gonna tell you a little bit about, how you're targeting earned media, owned media, and even outside of the media element, where they might participate with content into different areas of the site, for sure. And you can move to the next slide, please. Thanks. The other piece that I think everybody on this webinar knows is, you've got everybody from a 22-year-old journalist that's just graduated from school, all the way through to somebody who's in their 70s who's still working, and maybe they know everybody in the community around them. So you have a ton of demographics and different audiences, and each audience consumes information differently. So how are you getting those stories and that dynamic information in front of the right people that you want to engage with? And how are they actually being found? So, if they're a web searcher, maybe they're social butterflies, maybe they still like that one sheet that you print off, or the alumni magazine that they, it's a tangible good. Are they being pitched? Is it something that they want to find the source for? So having the ability to push all these things out there, but quickly, efficiently, easily, as opposed to nightmarishly time consuming, I don't want to do this anymore, please stop making the pain happen, was a critical element for us when pulling this together as well. And these cross-channel conversations are a critical way to be successful. And of course, we live in a social atmosphere. Being social and being able to make it dynamic and something people want to react to and consume turns itself into really interesting stories. Instagram, you've got Twitter, you have all these social channels, and a new one comes up, every 40 seconds. So how are we able to tackle that in a really dynamic way? And so a lot of times people say, oh gosh, I got to get it built. I have a woman who has waited 8 years for an expert center. we don't believe in just an expert center. We believe in experts being a big strategy. And I know we're going to touch on that. Make it a strategy and have it positioned into different places that you want to be seen. So it's not just in one spot. Have a speakers bureau, have an expert center, have a little research area, showcase somebody on a program page. All those things are possible, and they drive for you. What I'm showing you here is actually how we look at measuring things. So what kind of profile views am I getting? Is, who's bubbling up to the top? What kind of hits are they getting, so that I understand how, I'm going to say, how sexy they are at this time. Are they trending in a good way where people want to know who they are? And then, of course, how many inquiries are they getting? Who's on my leaderboard? This is your window of measurement. And then as you drill down on the next slide, you're going to actually see that I can capture the types of inquiries that are coming in from whoever it's coming in. And it gives me a snapshot, who is it? When did they want information from me? And, what's their contact details and what's the timeline? And that can be everything from a research inquiry, a media inquiry, a speaking inquiry, a donor inquiry, an admissions inquiry. And we see an unbelievable amount of student enrollment inquiries come through the system. And it facilitates that conversation. And again, having that workflow, so it's not, oh my God, this is such a burden. You can now spread it out with multi-access. I know questions have come up around, does the faculty build it themselves? Does the Marcom have to build it? For us, it was, we build the first version of the profile because you got to get the flywheel going. And if you don't, it will just sit there. It's probably the same reason they haven't updated their LinkedIn profile. It's just not something that's a priority for them, but it might be a priority for you. So we give a multi-access approach, and we've seen some phenomenal results where we can get in and the admin can get in and the person who has omnipotent control and the Marcom department can get in, and that means fresh information, and that for sure. Now, I don't want to bore you to tears with everything ExpertFile, but of course I am biased, and we certainly love it, but we certainly have a ton of results that have happened from institutions, and one of them is going to be talked about in our punchline. So I'll pass it back to you, Volt.
So I think the one thing we want to share about faculty and storytelling that we've learned over the years is that this is not a project. If you view it as a project where you populate it and then just let it sit, you are not going to be happy with the results that you see. This really is about a strategy and a process for managing faculty profiles and helping to aggregate the pieces that tell the stories of each of those faculty members, and also help the faculty members to tell the stories about the institution. So Dee, would you talk a little bit about Wake Forest University, please?
Yeah, so we were absolutely delighted to help Wake Forest University win the online Bulldog Award for Best Newsroom. The interesting part about this is, there's a lot of people that create an expert center. They have expert pages with profiles of their faculty. The challenge with that is they create an island, and that island is, Katie Neal over at Wake Forest did something incredibly poignant, which is, I wake up every day knowing that media people don't go, hey, maybe I should go to the Wake Forest site and see if they have an expert. Because that to me was, it's not the way the world works. So creating an expert center is a great way to bring people in and have that showcase, but where else is it existing? So all of her profiles for her expertise also exist and can be distributed across our search engine for experts at expertfile.com. They can also be integrated into places like, we have a relatively new relationship that we're establishing with the Associated Press, so it's front and center on the media side. And so what happens then is, most people go to the big G first, they're going to Google. And so if I'm typing in there, I'm able to be discovered, and then I'm going, well, I got to go to Wake Forest. And then maybe I find out that Wake Forest has set the table for me. And that's what they did. They basically created this unbelievable media journey where they would find an expert, they would find an expert pitch, they would talk about a person and a story, and they set the table. So the job was done. The job was also done for researchers and other audiences that want to go in and get a closer feel for those faculty members. So for us, it was about how are you extending that content? And we're delighted about the fact that they saw this as a holistic strategy, and that this was something that said, you know what, we want to make this a big part of our institution's focus, and they were rewarded for it. It's a great story.
Thank you very much. Mallory, I'm turning this over to you. I know we've got a few minutes left for questions and answers.
Yes, we sure do. Before we dive into Q&A, though, I know that many of our attendees today have participated in a number of our storytelling webinars that we've offered over the last year. But if you're new to our storytelling series or you missed a session, don't worry. We have 8 webinars on digital storytelling available for immediate download on our website. And you'll be able to take a deep dive into the specifics like design, analytics, accessibility requirements for digital stories, as well as specific audiences like prospective students, alumni, and donors. So that link is on your screen, but I'll also chat it out and share it on Twitter in just a moment. And, second, you can find out how your experts, you can grade your site, find out how your experts are doing. So ExpertFile is putting this grader report together, and it will help you understand the experience that media researchers and students have when sourcing your experts and how engaging they were, if they could understand how to reach out to them. As a digital audience evaluation, it will help you understand some of the areas to really focus on when it comes to showing your faculty presence online. And I know we have hundreds of people on today's webinar, so I'm just going to say, chances are a lot of folks are going to take advantage of this. Please don't expect a response tomorrow. But we are really excited. I'm sure Dee's really excited for anyone who'd like to get their expert grader report. And I will chat that link out in just a moment too. So one last reminder, please spare a couple minutes to fill out our webinar evaluation. I'll chat that link out as well and share that over email. But let's dive into Q&A. I know it's the top of the hour, and we really have some fantastic questions that I'd like to get to. So my guess is we're going to spend still about 10, 15 minutes on Q&A. If you have to leave because you've got another meeting to go to, don't worry. As I mentioned at the beginning of today's session, we are recording this webinar, and on Monday, you'll get an email with a link to that recording and the slide deck. So you can catch Q&A next week if you have to leave. But we've got some really fantastic questions. So let's dive right in. Voltaire, first and foremost, what do you think is the biggest missed opportunity with faculty storytelling today?
Yeah, I think that the biggest issue, I spent a lot of time taking a look at faculty sites, and the biggest missed opportunity is when the faculty site basically is a list of credentials. There's absolutely no personality there. There's no information that helps you to engage. So if what you have on your site now about faculty is simply where they went to school and what the department they're in, then there's a lot of opportunity there to tell much better stories and to engage people at the personal level. I think the second missed opportunity that I saw when I looked at faculty sites is that the level of cross-referencing is not very strong. So we looked at that story, for instance, of Dr. Carrington at University of Texas, and he was named one of the top 10 professors at the university. You cannot find that story on his bio at all. It's stunning to me because that is such that's such an honor, and to not have it on a bio page that clearly has spaces for that, to me was just that's really a shame, because that story brings him to even more life than just the profile and his website.
Yeah. Interesting. That's really surprising that you were able to find that story, but thanks for the example. Thanks for the answer. And let's move on to something very specific. At the beginning of the session, we talked about that one professor. We could maybe even back up the slides. Do you know what the PDF option leads you to on that profile page of the professor that you were talking about early on?
Yeah, so Klaus, I think, was the guy. Yeah, so with the profile there, you have a number of options. You can share, you can actually click on their CV, or you can do PDF. And what it does is it takes that entire profile and puts it into a PDF document. Other important things about that is you can also submit that link of that profile for grant applications. So it's giving you a lot of different actions, and the PDF is basically a PDF visual of that specific profile.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. A couple of folks were asking about that. A number of people, both on Twitter and in the chat room, were talking about best practices or tips around getting some of this information from faculty, because of course, as we've talked about, they've got their hands full with so many different obligations. So, are there, can we say there's 3 best practices, or here's 3 tips? If you're looking to really, get some of this info from faculty for the very first time?
If you don't mind, Walt, I'll take one of those. What we learned,
Yes,
and
please.
we learned it the hard way, which is, we dropped it off and said, here are your profiles, go nuts, and they, for marketing communications, people came back to us with tears in their eyes and hate in their voices and said, this doesn't work. These people aren't doing anything and I can't do anything. So innately we realized that if I created an editable profile, so if I created something that was ready to edit, innately I wanted to change it. So innately what we find is we'll pull together this wonderful profile for those faculty experts, and then when they see it, they want to go, oh, that's an old picture, and where'd you find that? And, oh, okay, I've got this stuff that I should really update this with, because they realize you're going to publish it. And the negative publishing option, because you can unpublish within a click of a button, you'd say, if I don't hear back from you by X day, I'm going to publish it, and you may get some people who are like, hey, whoa, I didn't say yes to that. It's usually about, 2% at max, even if they complain at all. But because it's something you can unpublish right away, that has really created a ton of engagement from people, where they've come across and said, oh, hey, I've got some stuff that you should look in that, because they see something and innately we want to edit. So that's been our success factor.
Mm-hmm.
Voltaire, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that makes a great deal of sense, Deanne. Whenever you can take the burden of the initiation off, that's really great. The other things that we find really contribute to success in collecting this information are, number one, endorsement from leadership. This sort of thing is not going to happen unless you have a sponsor at the senior level saying that this is important. A second thing that really helps up the engagement and the collection of information is, again, if you can tap into an existing process by which they have to turn in this information already. So whenever you can lean on something that they already have to do, that ups your chances of getting information. I would say the third thing is to be able to tell a credible story of the benefit that they get from this. And I think Deanne said something very insightful earlier. She said a lot of insightful things, but one of the things that I really loved was, Deanne, when you said, this has to be a win for the faculty member, right? We have to show the faculty member what the benefit is. And one of the cool things about having those measurement tools within ExpertFile is you can actually show either at the same institution or other institutions, the sort of metrics behind the benefit to a faculty member. And that helps to build a case for, honestly, a little bit more of a self-interested set of engagement behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great points. Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, but what if you're working with faculty, say in engineering, who want to leave in every little technical detail about their research and work, even when, the information is going to be shared, with the masses, and perhaps on, developing some empathy for them, it's their handle on details that makes them reputable to their peers. So how could a marketing person at a university work with a faculty like that and help them understand that snackable information idea?
You bring up a really good point. And it's the reason I love that Volt showed that great profile from UT Austin, because the one thing that he posted there was that you can have a link to a website. So you're never leaving anything off. What you want to do is get somebody engaged with them. So we'll always say, hey, the really top of mind articles are the ones that really stand out for different communities. Those are the kind of the ones you want to list, because really, unless it's another researcher, if this is for tenure or publishing or a review, they don't need to see the 483 papers you've done since the dawn of time. And in fact, they just don't have the time to do that. So asking them the question, what does this need to serve for you? And having the ability to put a link to another page and actually give some color on what that page is and who it's for. So, hey, fellow researchers, check out my articles. I have a few since, 1983. and have the ability to put it over there so they feel comfortable that it's showing, but it doesn't dominate their profile and make it an exhausting read. That's how we've always looked at it, and we have some best practices that we share so that the marketing person's armed to have that conversation. And Volt, you probably have some experience as well.
So yeah, I think it's a really wonderful question, because not just with engineering, but I think with any scholarly endeavor, there are going to be faculty members who will take the attitude of, well, you know, you're dumbing this down. You are dumbing down the work that I'm doing. And, you know, there's some truth to that, you know, depending on what the story is and who's written it and what approach we've taken. And I think it really is a bit of an art to figure out how it is to communicate impact in a way that is going to connect with people who don't have the same level of expertise. Right. And I think, Deanne, you really bring up that point of helping faculty members to understand the audience that you're trying to reach. Right, because the story that is going to resonate and make sense to a media professional is not the same information that you are going to share with a potential collaborator or a tech transfer firm. So it really is a matter of taking a user-centered or audience-centered approach to the piece and educating faculty members when they're willing to be educated about the approach they're taking and the validity behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dee, tell me, when you're working with university clients, do you find that most of them are giving the control to the faculty members to update and share the information right within the pages, or is marketing and communications really managing that process?
That's really interesting. We might even have an almost even split. So we've been hit with people that say, you know, I've got some trusted faculty that I would like them to have control. And then I've got some other folks that either I know they won't get in there, or I'm worried sometimes that they might say something controversial, or they might just get in there and you know, I hate to say the words, muck things up because they don't want to do it fast. So we have people that have split that. Yeah, I hate to say that. They can do a PhD, but they can't operate this darn CMS. You know, I mean, it's terrible to say, but it's more about that's not their interest area. It's not where their skill set lies. So I think there's some worry there, right? And I think it's being able to establish. Before I knocked Volt right off his chair.
You have no idea. Deanne, this is dinner time for me every day when I get home. I'm married to one of the foremost Holocaust historians in the world. And as soon as I get home, there's a problem with mail. It won't send out. It won't send out my mail. There's something wrong with the computer. And I'm like,
yeah, it's user error.
It'll be a user error.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And, you know, we come across it because, again, they're like, please don't make me do this. Like, this is not where my strength lies. And I get that. And so what we end up having is we have schools that, because they can manage the control, they can say, look, guys, get in there. But they also have the ability to get in there, too. So they're not left with this, but I told you to get in there. And so each school is different. Some people are just like, let them have at her. We just want them to get in there and get in there quickly. And then you have other schools that are saying, meh, I think I'm going to lock them out a little bit. And because it's multi-access, what we find is most schools will identify an admin person at the faculty level who has access for a group of faculty members. And that person becomes the go-to person. And that works really effectively.
Voltaire, what's your take on including part-time or adjunct faculty in something like this?
I think that it really depends on the institution, but I like whenever you can include adjunct and faculty members. And in fact, Dee, you can talk about Loyola Marymount University, who they include all of their faculty members in the expert list. And I'd love you to share a little bit that you can, whatever you are able to share about the rationale, the philosophy, and the benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we came across the adjunct, I mean, I think a lot of them realized the adjunct have some unbelievably valuable and quality content. More so, I think the school itself was dealing with, there's certain rules that govern the ability for adjunct to be seen as equal to full-time professors. So, you know, they were also behind the 8 ball of, I need to make this resource accessible by adjunct so it isn't seen as an inequality. And I know there's a lot of work being done around adjunct being seen as a sort of a second-class citizen, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. the nice part about this is it's a way to show them that they are a precious commodity, and not to make a distinction of, oh, you're just adjunct. And they do have incredible content, because a lot of those adjunct are practicing in regular experiential fields and doing that job on a daily basis. So it creates a nice commodity. And we've had this conversation about, God, these faculty don't come out of the woodwork. A lot of times you're going to get a lot of adjunct faculty that come out of the woodwork. And when somebody's looking at that site, they're not making the distinction, oh, that must be an adjunct professor. They're looking at, who have you got who's a really smart person, who's got incredible content that I want to liaise with. So I think that's more of behind the scenes, is this something we want to do? Loyola Marymount decided to do everyone, not only because there were rules governing that, but because they wanted everyone to feel as though they were all a part of this really enhanced faculty presence, and that they were equally important, and that the quality of their study was equally important.
Awesome. Thanks for that example. I think that really helped me understand the point better, and hopefully our attendees as well. All right, a few more questions here. Any experience or tips, Dee, on how to make sure the media knows you have experts in certain topics?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of schools that want to punch above their weight. Everybody in the region knows me, because I'm in I can't even pronounce the name. It was, that funny name in Pennsylvania, really small town, Puxatawny, I think it is. Anyway, so, you'll know the regional people. It's a small community. Regional is a little bit easier, but everybody's saying, I want national, I want international. My executive wants me to be showcased. So how do they find me? I see a lot of experts that have a very curriculum-based keyword. So I either have to know that Bob Bushman is the guy, which I won't, because I'd have to memorize 400 million different experts, or I have to know that that school has that expertise, but how can I find that if I don't have the ability to search by keyword or topic? And so for us, it's a really good practice and exercise. We went down the path of creating a standardized and dynamic.
Oh, I think Dee may have dropped off.
Dee down!
Dee down! Voltaire, are you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me now?
I can. Great. We'll see if Dee comes back, but my next two questions are actually for you. So we're just going to pivot right to them. Okay. Voltaire, with, the rock star faculty, or even the rising star faculty in the minority, how do you work or to convince those non-faculty participants that what those rock stars are doing is extremely beneficial, and hey, you can be one too?
That is a really, really great question around relationship management. And if you don't mind, I think Dee probably has more to say on that than I do. Can we table that until she comes back in?
We sure can. And then one more for you. Thoughts on prioritization, right? And prioritization on every level. Mm-hmm. So you might have to prioritize faculty members if you're getting an overwhelming response by offering to tell their stories. Tips on that would be appreciated. But also, for our attendees who are working in small teams, or who may be the sole writer or web person on their staff, like, what should they be focusing on to have the most impact if they're going to start doing this?
That's a really great question. I think maybe one way to think about it is sort of a dual-pronged action. So I think that there's a lot of sensibility, smart sensibility around building an experts or faculty experts database a la ExpertFile. And the nice thing about doing something like that is that most of the work is really ExpertFiles to do. So you can engage with ExpertFile and have them assemble the initial bios for faculty members, and you can decide whether you want to have 5 faculty members, 10 faculty members, or all faculty members within that sort of project, or not project, but really strategy and process. And I think a lot of that will depend on, number one, cost, but number two, level of current engagement with faculty members. But you can always add more people to that sort of faculty base over time. So I would say that if an institution does not have a very good faculty experts database or a faculty directory, working with ExpertFile to create that is fairly low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
And then I would say from the long-form storytelling standpoint, what I tell most teams, and most teams don't have a lot of resources, is focus on what is going to be most important for your key metrics. And normally that's around admissions, right? Normally it's around admissions and around development and around alumni engagement. So focusing on the stories that are going to help with recruitment, that are going to help with alumni relations. And normally in the storytelling workshops we do with our clients, we'll walk them through an experience map and say, all right, here are the different parts of the journey that a prospective student goes through. Here are your opportunities to create content that is going to support that part of the journey. And then we go to the editorial calendar and we take a look at everything that already exists, and we're able to say, all right, this doesn't map to an experience. This doesn't map to anything that supports admissions. Do we really need to do it? And then we can conversely look at the list and say, all right, what stories can we tell that support this moment in time between when someone gets the acceptance letter and when they have to make their final decision and put a deposit down? Because there are definite behaviors, thoughts, feelings, and actions that happen within that space, and there are stories that you can tell to support that part of the journey. So I would take a dual-pronged approach where, honestly, a lot of the work is done by ExpertFile to create a faculty profile, and then for long-form storytelling, focus on the stories that are really going to move the needle with the key admissions, fundraising, and alumni objectives.
Awesome. And welcome back, Dee. Did you have any more thoughts on making sure the media knows you have experts in certain topics?
Yeah, apologies, guys. We got hit with a little bit of a power outage here. So I was I didn't think the storm outside was going to be that bad, but apparently lightning does that. But anyway, yeah, so to finish what I was saying, being able to have it so that you're really not only optimized for Google, but distribution. We're really big about distribution. We distribute to our search engine at expertfile.com. And we also, as I mentioned sort of briefly, we have an integration agreement that we're finalizing with the Associated Press. So obviously that helps get the media people, but what's most important is to understand how they search. So you need to make it very easy for them to access something, and you need to also be following them on Twitter and making sure you're social, because there's a good portion of journalists that really, that's a gospel way for them to operate. So understanding where they're spending time is a really big way for them to understand where they can find you in the stories and the people. So being able to put that content out is critical. You know, a link to a profile that's dynamic and a storyline and tweet it out or direct message, that's a really great way for them to get socialized and understand what's important to them. We work with media every day, and they can be fickle. They can be tough. They can be incredibly forgiving, and they run the gamut. So making sure you're optimized on only your site, being social, finding them and making it easy for them, and having profiles that are dynamic enough that you can distribute them is a really big key.
Yep. Awesome tips. And then the last question for today, heading back to you, Dee. So many institutions do have those rock stars and those rising stars that they can rely on, but that's typically the minority, or there aren't, if only every faculty could be that, marketing and communications expert for you. But how would you recommend convincing the non-participants that what those individuals are doing is really beneficial?
I think it goes back to that almost that needs assessment. It's a little bit of side chair therapy. I know it sounds a little strange, but the give and get. Why is it that you don't want to be a media ambassador? Does it feel like that's not something you're interested in? Well, what are you interested in? I think what they find out very quickly is, while this profile initially is run by the marketing communications team with the idea of socializing who's here at the institution and why people should come, I think they also need to understand that the footprint of being able to be found lends itself to greater research focus, greater research adoption, grant dollars that can come through, forwarding programs, their brand, they reflect so much the brand. People want to learn from people and connect with people. In fact, people-oriented content now drives the benchmark of the most valuable content that's out there. So I think it's having a conversation and say, you got some really incredible content, but I know you're a little bit adverse to media. Can we have a conversation about what you're willing to do and how you're willing to participate? And if you are willing to participate in some way, shape, or form, I find a lot of times what we discover is people say, I'm willing to put my toe in the water. And when they get a research inquiry come through for them, they go, oh, what's this now? Who, what? And if you see like graduate student, increase in inquiry around their program, then their ears perk up. And then even if they get like a lift quote printed into a document where they didn't really have to do much, they sort of go, that's not as scary as I thought. And maybe participating in this way is something that I feel is valuable. And it is a little bit of a, come here, little, I've got some candy, we can be friends. But I think it is a little bit of a negotiation and helping them understand that you're as committed to getting them value as, wanting to get value yourself. And so I know it's time consuming. It's a little bit more of a struggle. We always come out with some documents that show how this particular content impacts the entire institution all the way across. And I'm happy to provide that. Like, here are those cross-functional teams and how this can impact them. And I think sometimes when they see that on both the tech transfer and the VP of research side, this satisfies more goals than just, hey, you're my show pony. And I think that just hearing that makes a difference.
Awesome. All right, folks, for those of you who stuck around for an extra 20 minutes, we so appreciate it. But these were amazing questions, and there were so many of them. We had to answer them all. So thanks for sticking around. We will be emailing out the recording and slide deck on Monday, but within the next hour, you will get an email from me to take that short post-webinar evaluation, and we so appreciate your 5 minutes spent doing that. So thanks in advance. Voltaire, Deanne, awesome session today. Thank you for your time and your expertise, and we're so looking forward to seeing you both again, maybe on a future mStoner webinar. Thanks all. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.